No encores, though. Do I do weddings?
Any other
Have
questions?
one in mind? Sure. That's it? An encore? Joe.
Hey, Craig. I'm channeling Doc. Where does VRM fit in?
The question is, where does VRM fit? So let me explain what VRM is for a second. VRM stands for Vendor Relationship Management. Now, to me, what's happening with VRM is this inverted communication approach, where the traditional mechanism of top-down organization to an individual, track and target, no longer works. And that what has to happen is the person now becomes in charge with communicating and permissioning what happens between that person and the organization. So I include VRM in this inverted pyramid graphic and the trend that's happening for communications to completely change from the old model to the new model. Does that answer?
It does. I have another question.
Okay.
When you talked about the 3 Ps, would you elaborate a little bit more on how the shift is happening from the A's to focusing more on the policy permissioning and
the 3 Ps?
The policy permissioning and privacy.
Yeah, that's not a shift. She's asking about the 3 Ps of identity. All I'm saying is that when identity is talked about traditionally, the focus is on authorization and on authentication, and privacy, policy, and permissioning is
to it. I understand that, but is it correct to look at that and say this is an architect, programming, an architect? It extends all of our technology, architectural concepts to say this is now the architecture for coding.
Yeah, you need these
Internet.
3 elements to do context automation. So if you want to drive the intention economy and have it change from a relatedness happening between the customer and the vendor rather than the organization, impinging its will on everyone watching the commercial, then the place to start is the elements of this triangle.
But all the precursors, right? All the identity management contracts, service-oriented architecture. They all plug into this, and this is now an architecture with which to take those concepts to the next level in these transitions that are taking place. Is that a fair interpretation?
I would call it an approach more than an architecture. It's a thinking. It's a way to look at it. I don't think it's an architecture by itself. But right. In that regard. Did this help, or we? Where?
Alex, you have the microphone over there, bud?
Chad.
If I look
Not
at...
on. Okay.
Can everybody hear me? There we go. Got to get really close to this microphone. If we consider identity and you consider the operating system wars and the browser wars and the social networking wars, clearly what happens is there's never one winner. So if we look at the requirement to transform identity based upon characteristics that you've described here. What are your thoughts on getting? How do we get to a place where there is significant adoption of a technology, and
Sure.
to make this move forward? And then second, what kind of defines the characteristics of that technology so that it would be adopted in your mind?
Well, I'll answer that a little bit, but if you want to read a white paper that I wrote that answers that in detail, you can go to the Information Card Foundation website, and there's that white paper that says, how do we make the identity metasystem ubiquitous? And it points out very clearly that the identity metasystem is not a single solution. It's an architecture that includes all identity architecture within a framework of the selector. And you can have multiple types of selectors or vendors providing selectors. It's not a selector, and it's not a solution for identity. It's a framework for an identity solution that takes us beyond cookies. Of which, Paul's not here, but Paul and their group and Novell for some time was doing huge work in making that move forward, and now, except for Azigo, have kind of stopped. And I think it's because they're confused, because they focus on the A's and not the P's.
Craig, in your model, what do you see as the role, or the evolving role of personal data store?
Question is, what do I see as the evolving role of the personal data store? Yeah, to me, the personal data store is just a place where detail about your identity can be accessed and available. It's a subset of this. I don't need to actually represent it as it's a where your data resides. So that it's in that third triangle or element of the triangle. Okay, thanks a lot, and thanks for coming.